Alright, so far we've had the chance to look at the UI and how the UI is laid out inside a Mudbox so that we can get around in it. We've had a chance to look at some of the basic sculpting tools, the painting tools, and some of the stamps and the stencils, and the properties, as well as even our viewport filters and our object list and our layers. So we've had a chance to really see the broad stroke of how Mudbox works. And what we want to do is we want to take all of that knowledge that we've learned so far, we want to put it into practice with a practical project. We'll be using a model that comes with Mudbox. We're going to be using the basic head, and with the basic head we are going to sculpt in some sort of creature or alien, whatever it is that you may be wanting to do. You can follow along with my example, or you can certainly take off with your own creativity and start making up one on your own. But for our example, we'll start with our basic head, and this way we have a model that is prepped and ready. The topology is nice and smooth, the topology being the lines that you see going around here. This is our topology on our model. And with a good topology on it, we won't have to worry about any issues with the model as we model. Definitely before you begin a project, if you have a new model on the scene, you want to make sure that the model is prepped and ready. You want to examine the model, make sure that there's no areas where you're going to have any trouble. And for the most part, what we can see here, we've got a good prepped model. We're going to go ahead and subdivide this guy, and we'll subdivide him up to at least about 500,000 polys. This will give us enough to block in the basic shapes and the forms that we want to work with. And of course, the first thing that we want to do is we want to create a new layer, this new sculpting layer. We'll call this we'll call it our rough draft, our draft. Alright, you could even call it maybe your muscle layer if you're laying in the basic muscles. And we're just going to scale our size down. Remember, B and M, and left mouse click and drag. That'll set that size nice and easy for you. Now as you start to work on your model, one of the first things that you do want to do is save it out. So we're going to go over here and do File, and we'll do Save Scene. And in the Save Scene, we'll call this one our creature head. And it's going to save it as a .mud, so a mud file from Mudbox. We'll save that one. So now we've got our object subdivided and ready, we've got it saved and ready, and we can start sculpting, having some fun with it. One of the first things I'm going to do is turn on my mirroring for my sculpting brushes. I'm going to turn it on the X so that what I do here I can get on the other side as well. And what we need to do is just start coming up with, what do we want this creature to look like? And we're going to go for something tough, some sort of strong warrior-like character. And what I'm doing in here is I'm just laying in around the brow ridge. And if you have trouble sometimes knowing, exactly where do I put muscles, where do I pull geometry in and out, a lot of that's going to go back to an understanding of the anatomical structure of the monster, the character, the human that you're working on. So if you're not too familiar with it, definitely get some reference to work with. Just have that reference with you as you're working. It's a great way to work and to learn. This is our little masseter over here. We're just going to pull this out right along that jaw. And then we can even go in and make some much broader strokes if we wanted to. We could go in and grab some of this model and adjust its basic shapes. There we go. And maybe we want sure that the back of his head, we've got a nice meaty neck. We'll pull this out on both sides. There we go. And all we're doing is going in here and just defining the shapes that we want and how we want them. Let's see if we can get that all pulled out nice. There we go. On that one we'll do a little bit smaller on that brush. Somewhere in there. We just want to pull some of that up. And we're just doing more of a bust right in here just to play with these shapes. But you see how we can just take the geometry, we can just push it, pull it, however we're wanting. And if you considered what it looked like to where it is, we're able to really adjust that shape and use more of a default to start with. Alright, this is pretty good. This gives us a fun little starting place. Now we get to just have some fun and sculpt. We get to just be artists for a while, find shapes, have some fun with it. And let's see if we can get just about the right. There we go. So I'm going to start laying in a little bit of something in here. We'll start to push our chin out a little bit, strengthen that up. There we go. And then we might even just jump in here to our neck muscle, our sternum mastoideus. And we'll beef that up a little bit right in there. There we go. We've got our clavicles that are going to be coming right about in here. We'll branch those guys out and have a nice little pulled S-curve. Let's bring our brush a little bit bigger, and we've got our deltoids on the side that we're not really messing with because we're not to that point, but we are going to branch across with our chest muscle coming in from our deltoid, and it just stretches from the inside and back out. There we go. Gives us a starting point at least. Alright, and then into our back, we're just going to lay that in. We've got this basically laid in here as we pulled it out. And then right around where it's going to connect. That gives us a basic shape that we want to work with. And you can see we're just left clicking and just dragging it out. Nice and simple. Alright, so on our character, we've got a basic right in here. We're probably going to go with a nice little deep ridge that's going to work its way around here. And then maybe even pairs up and it works its way back. There we go. Some nice repeating patterns always look good. And we can let that form all the way down to our vertebrae. we go. We're just laying in some nice repeating patterns, some flesh, maybe some bone. And then on the front, let's see if we can actually grab a little bit of this. We're going to pull this out just a little. There we go. And maybe even a little with the nose. There we go. And we'll start sculpting around that. Actually, I'm going to smooth that up just a little bit. We'll get our smooth brush. And just make sure that we don't have any pinched edges or anything. Go back to a sculpting brush, or even with a scraping brush if we wanted. And I may switch back and forth between brushes as I go. I'm just looking for the right lines and the right amounts. Bringing in our shapes. We're just pulling out a little bit for the nostril and the nose. We can tuck it in just a little bit, control. And we can bring in a little bit more of a brow sitting down, a little pocket for the eye socket area. And we can beef up around our zygomatic bone that comes right in here and up. And what we're doing is we're just laying in the basic foundation that we can work from. And this gives us a good foundation, and we can knock away a little bit in here. We've got an ear that's divided into thirds, basically a C and a Y. Nice little shadow around it. There we go. And of course you could spend a lot of time on each and every little part and piece. Okay, so this gives us the beginnings of our little character. And we're just gonna pull out that shape just a little bit. There we go. We'll push that one out as well. Let's see if we can get that shape a little smoother. There we go. And if you're thinking about this just, from even a perspective of as a sculptor, you're just laying on that initial layer of clay onto your model. And as artists, we constantly work in revisions. We're constantly layering in and building on. The works that we do as we create and define the shapes. Base a little bit, because we're going to add maybe something a little more alienish across him. Okay, so this gives us the beginning of it, and then we're going to keep adding on to it and defining our little shape for what will become our alien creature-like character.